countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Live from that bar in which Aquaman drinks like a fish, it is now time for more of the Last Comic Shop podcast.
That's right, like a flash. We are opening up the shop again and again and again. 5 days in the past and the future and whatever. Don't get the Speed Force, but whatever.
I don't know if it can be gotten, but like the rest of the oldie moldies, we're going to stay here until we figure it out. Keep the lights on for those people that are trying to figure it out as well.
I think DC is trying to figure it out, to be honest.
I'm always trying to figure out what my wonderful co-hosts are going to bring to this week's show. What kind of energy, what kind of excitement, what kind of hilarity when we talk about comics. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. Those two co-hosts are Jay Scott and Chad Smith, as well as the wonderful, truly wonderful Mikey Wood, who's joined us for another week. Yay! Because we're doing a DC book. And I have to say that if you were wondering what book we're covering, it's not Aquaman. I think it was Tempest, which is, I guess, Aqualad, whatever. Long story short, there's a scene in this book with Donna Troy carrying Tempest over her shoulder. And my God, is that like one of the sexiest pictures I ever saw? Because her legs must be like a mile long in these heels. Oh, great stuff by Clay Mann, coming from Heroes in Crisis.
This was a book I forced you guys to read under duress. So I don't know if it's under duress. It's very controversial. A lot of people hate it. It's one of my favorite stories I've ever read, actually. So,
Mikey, I'm colorblind, dude, and there's a 2-page spread that's still like those dot pictures.
Yeah, it's just the title. Heck? It's just the title. Yeah. I forgot you were colorblind. That's color deficient.
That's right.
Speaking of that, did you like that they showed that photo in just its original pencils in the back, and there's it's just a whole lot of flowers?
Yeah.
Just messing with me.
Well, I will say, whether it's, again, the Donna Troy walking in the street, whether it's Booster Gold and Blue Beetle sitting on the couch eating pizza, drinking beers, a lot of cool 2-page spreads in this particular series of books. From Tom King and Clay Mann, as well as some other folks, as we'll get to in the next segment when we go over all of that. But one thing that we wanted to start off today's show with is going to the texts. That's right. I had texted all of my co-hosts this week about what would be a good opening segment. And after shooting down a bunch of ideas, eventually Chad mentioned one that I think will be pretty cool. What are we talking about today, Chad?
The idea was looking at big swings, times when people take their big swing, their large-scale character change, and when it works and when it doesn't.
So would you consider this a reboot? Like when they take characters and like completely reboot them and throw them in a different direction, and then you're just like, okay, well, this is going to be the status quo from now on.
I feel like reboots could be a part of it. Sometimes people take over a book at issue 34. They're like, no, we're going to go this way now. And you're like, that was a bad idea.
Because I was curious, because sometimes, like with those kind of character shifts, they are just kind of temporary, just for a little while. Like, just because Dan Slott wrote The Silver Surfer like Doctor Who does not mean he's Doctor Who Silver Surfer forever. Like, it was just one writer's, take on that particular character. I wouldn't consider that a reboot, but I would consider what Alan Moore did to Swamp Thing a reboot.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely, like, everything about that book changed from the first volume to the second, and then those first 20 issues of the second volume were kind of more slightly horror, but more sort of like just B-movie schlock, like really fun B-movie schlock. I don't want to cut down Marty Pasco, God rest his soul. But yeah, I mean, the whole tone of the book changed. So I would say that's if not a reboot, it's a restart of something. It's just like really psychological, like lots of horror going on, lots of psychedelic stuff going on, lots of internal struggle, and yeah, it wrote the very nature of the character from being a man who thinks he's a plant to a plant that thinks he's a man, and that just flipped the whole thing over. So yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll go to you, Chad. It was your idea. Do you have a big swing that somebody took, and whether it connected or not?
geez, it's hard to follow up Swamp Thing, which like that not only redefined the character, like that begat Vertigo and begat all sorts of other grown-up-y stuff. For me, I was thinking like JMS on Spider-Man, where initially when JMS takes over, he took some swings. He took Peter Parker and put him in the classroom as a teacher, which I thought was a fun but stupid idea, just because the way superheroing work does not lend itself to a traditional teaching schedule. You know what I mean? Like Peter Parker could only not show up for so long. But JMS, that first year or two, he was crack-a-lackin'. They had that 9/11 issue in there. They brought in Ezekiel and Moreland, and those ideas were fun and exciting at first. And then by the end of the big swing, instead of focusing on the ball going out of the park, it was like someone else just took the bat and just destroyed everything we hold near and dear. And you had Spider-Man having things coming out of his arms in the other and dying and being reborn, and a whole host of stupidity that was real bad. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that kind of begat one of my big swings that never connected, and I'll say it once, and I'll say it again, breaking up Mary Jane and Peter Parker, bad idea. And I feel like Marvel is still doubling down on this bad idea to this day, given the fact that Ultimate Spider-Man is outselling Amazing Spider-Man right now with a Peter Parker and Mary Jane that's married, and yet they still don't think it was a good idea. I don't know, get those guys, I don't know. They keep on
wrote
doubling
themselves
down
into the corner with that. The worst thing to ever happen to Peter Parker was that they got married to Mary Jane and now can't do anything with them.
Right, but at that point, the toothpaste was out of the tube.
Yeah.
You know, you can't get rid of the marriage. You just have to move on with a slightly more aged Peter Parker. It's not like they don't have enough spider derivatives to take over teenage Peter Parker's place.
Right. I've said that time and time again. You've got Miles. He's your teenage young adult Peter Parker. Just write the stories with Miles. In fact, that's a great idea.
But don't you guys see, and that's funny that we're talking about and probably strategic that we're talking about this before we talk about Heroes in Crisis, because Heroes in Crisis is the first book that I read and went online and found out how possessive people are about characters, especially like Wally West and stuff like that. They don't want these big swings to happen. They want that status quo, but they also bitch about the status quo all the time. It's like, it's the same stories every 20 years. It's the same shit because nobody wants changes. Nobody wants to, and that's one thing that King does a lot, is that he goes in and he does things with characters that people don't usually do. And the reaction either goes from like, that was really awesome, to like him getting death threats online, and I'm not kidding. He gets death threats.
That's in no way excusable.
People are crazy.
Stories, like, let people tell their stories. I go back to Dan Slott. Andy brought him up already, where Dan Slott had a run on Spider-Man for the longest time. And on one hand, comics are all about the illusion of change, right? Most of your superheroes are very rarely like truly affected by something, but everything needs to seem like the world is ending this month, so you buy the next issue, that sort of thing. And Dan Slott was known for taking some big swings, and there were one or two that worked. Like, I thought Superior Spider-Man was great. But then there were other ones where it's like, oh, he changed Peter Parker into like Iron Man from the 60s, where he's running Parker Industries and like things that I just felt were antithetical to the character. And we've often talked on the show about our Dan Slott theory, whereas if you really care about a character, you're going to hate when Dan Slott comes on, because he's going to turn Silver Surfer into Doctor Who.
Yes.
But if you're like, whatever, Silver Surfer, who cares? Then you're like, I can dig this Doctor Who story. I'm sure there were people out there that were digging Spider-Man with the electric light spider in his chest and pretending he was Iron Man from the 60s. But like, as a fan, I was like, it wasn't working for me. Now, I did not go and threaten Dan Slott's life, or heck, I even still bought the magazines. I just complained about it.
Right. We just mentioned Silver Surfer. We haven't let J.A. throw out his. J.A., do you have a swing that maybe connected or didn't connect?
Totally connected, mainly because before he was like the most vanilla, boringest character of all time, and that would be Angel, that was turned into Archangel.
Yes.
Because No one cared about Angel. Even the writers didn't like him. He was so boring. It's just a rich guy with wings. Oh no, you have giant wings that you can hide underneath a suit, and then you can go fly around in the sky like a bird and be free. And you're rich and white and blonde.
That's true. That's true. They gave him an awesome look. They gave him some pathos. They made him super cool for that edgier late 80s, early 90s. It was a good fit for him. In fact, I will say that like most of the original X-Men went through some sort of recreation that I think a lot of that, for the most part, those swings actually took off. Whether it was Marvel Girl turning into Phoenix, whether it was Beast turning into an actual beast. I mean, that was a swing. Like, he went from just being a guy with big hands and big feet to actually being a furry dude, which was kind of cool.
And Iceman went from being a guy that makes snowman to Omega level ice creation.
All right. But let me ask you this. These changes, most of the ones you're talking about are changes that are happened like by the 80s at the latest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about the modern changes to those characters. Like, Archangel's a badass now. That's true. But Cyclops, like, they've kind of broken him with some of their swings, trying to make him into a badass who's more militant, and he's more Magneto than Charles Xavier these days. Iceman, there were tons of fans that rebelled when he came out. His younger self realized that he was gay, and that affected the older Iceman, and fans revolted. And I go back to my big question is, do big swings traditionally work more on characters that you're not as invested in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, so something like Animal Man, when Morrison was writing Animal Man, he did all of these bizarre, bonkers things to Animal Man and, like, killed his family and did all of these other things. And the way they retconned all that stuff was brilliant. Like, he meets his own character and has a conversation with them about where his mind was at the time that he was writing the book, and apologizes for putting them through all this shit and all that stuff. So yeah, I think if it's kind of a, reboots of characters people weren't familiar with or aren't as beloved, land more because there's not that much invested in there. Like Alan Moore's Miracle Man. So
yeah, I'm thinking Fraction and Aja's Hawkeye.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, they totally took that character and for all intents and purposes, if you're a classic, Hawkeye's a blonde guy who looks like Captain America, who's just a little bit sloppier. They broke him. They made him into a total screw-up character. Or even like Iron Fist, speaking of Fraction and Aja. They did Iron Fist. They made that work.
That was what I was going to say. Luke Cage is a perfect example of somebody that really did, in some ways, need a reboot, need a modern representation. And nowadays, like, the Luke Cage we have now is the Luke Cage most people think about. Like, that's the Luke Cage. And so I feel like these swings are necessary, and sometimes they definitely do work more with the B and C list characters. I think that's your sweet spot. I think if you do it with D-list characters, nobody. It can be like a joke. Like, I still think that, like, as much as I love Next Wave, like, Machine Man shouldn't just always be about the joke. Like, he could be used in stories. Why not? I don't know. But long story short, we've talked a lot on this particular segment. We got to get to our book this week. So stay tuned for more Last Comic Shop right after this, where we're going to be talking about his big swing that Tom King took with the character of Wally West in Heroes in Crisis. But did he really take that swing, or did other people take it for him? Stay tuned.
Looking to save money on your collectible supplies? Whether it's comics, cards, sports memorabilia, or miscellaneous pop culture bric-a-brac, make sure to use promo code LCSPOD to get 10% off your orders at bcwsupplies.com. Not only does it get you a discount on BCW's already low prices, but using LCSPOD at checkout is an amazing way to show support to the Last Comic Shop podcast, the most incredible comic book podcast on the airwaves. So if you are in need of collectible supplies, head out to bcwsupplies.com and use promo code LCSPOD today. That's promo code LCSPOD. Cheers!
From Fantagraphics, The Santos Sisters Volume 1 hardcover collection. Compiling issues 1 to 5 of the hit indie comic book series. Join Amber and Alana, two ordinary girls with extraordinary powers, as they fight crime, date dumb guys, and try to stay sane in a world full of assassins, zombies, crazy ex-girlfriends, and more. A mix of Archie comics meet Love and Rockets with a healthy dose of kick-ass action. Order your copy today.
All right, we are back to talk Heroes in Crisis and other stories. I think that's what it was called. Anyways, it's a whole lot of DC stuff going on by Tom King and a lot of artists, because there are a lot of fill-in pages and beautiful 2-page spreads. Mikey, give us the rundown of everyone who worked on this.
Well, I pulled a number on you guys, and I made you read all the little fill-ins that go in between the issues, because I think it personally adds to the story. But like I said, mileage might vary on that one. But the primary story, Heroes in Crisis issues 1 through 9, is written by Tom King with art by Clay Mann, who's amazing. There is a few fill-in issues of Green Arrow, which was written by Julie Benson and Shauna Benson, with art by Javi Fernandez. And then there were a couple of issues of Batman and the Flash, a storyline called The Price, which was written by Joshua Williamson with art by Julian March and Rafa Sandoval. And there was a Flash annual number 2 in there somewhere, which I can't remember who did it, but yeah. So it was
Scott Collins was on art. I don't know who the writer was.
That's right. You could read the primary story, but I feel like the addendums read in a particular order really flesh out the story and kind of show an interesting side of superheroics. Andrew will disagree with me inevitably.
Me? I'm the one. Chad's like the... Nah, we'll get to it. Mm-hmm. Chad, 10-cent synopsis. Come on. What is this about?
So there is a place called Sanctuary. This is a place for heroes to go when they are in crisis, when they need some help sorting out what it is they do. It's made with Kryptonian tech, which has been modified by Batman, and Wonder Woman's in there somewhere. It's open all these heroes to come and to get the help they need. And it's working fine until it stops, because someone comes and murders everyone in Sanctuary. All the information that was supposed to be destroyed makes it out to Lois Lane. Someone leaks that information, and she, as a diligent reporter, lets people know what's going on. And then Superman, as a diligent reporter's husband, tells his superhero friends, it's real bad. And then the murder mystery ensues, where you have the Trinity going up against some B and C listers like Wally West and Harley Quinn and Booster Gold and Blue Beetle and Barbara Gordon. So Harley Quinn thinks it's Booster Gold thinks it's Harley Quinn, and then all chaos breaks out until they find out who did it, and they have to accept those things, and then everything is wiped clean at the end.
Yeah, and I believe it was wiped clean. I mean, all of this eventually was retconned. Like, even though all these people died in Sanctuary, even J.A.'s favorite, the Cro-Magnon.
I just love the idea that there's this, Cro-Magnon-like man who speaks in broken English, and he's like the caveman lawyer.
Yeah, unfrozen caveman lawyer.
Yes, misses his time in the past, but if he lived in the past, then he wouldn't get to read Keats, and I like the juxtaposition of it all.
Right.
That's Narc, the last Cro-Magnon. Gnark.
Well, and again, it was eventually retconned because people were up in arms about what they did to Wally West. Spoiler alert, Wally West is the person that ended up killing all these people in Sanctuary by accident. He loses control of the Speed Force because he thinks that Sanctuary was set up just for him, right? Like, he's so broken, as you find out, he was brought back from the dead, but he was brought back without his wife and his kids. And it was all Barry's fault. Again, it's all f***ing Barry's fault. And that's what I'm going to say. That's what I'm going to say. This whole thing, I don't know why people were mad at Tom King for doing what he did to Wally West. Because, to be honest, Tom King coming out and saying, like, you know what? They really screwed Wally West, like, really badly. So he would be screwed up by how badly they screwed him up. You got to eat your just desserts now, DC. You wanted to bring Barry back. These are the repercussions. I feel like this is the whole problem with all of DC, is like, you retcon all this stuff, you make these big changes, and then nobody wants their just desserts. And like, for once, Tom King's like, these are your just desserts. This is what you got to deal with. This is the trauma that you would have if somebody lost their wife and their kids and nobody seemed to care. Yeah. The only thing they cared about was the fact that Wally was back. And he gets to be like that dude that's there going, I'm hopeful. Yay, I'm here to support Barry, even though he was the main Flash in the universe for a long time. So in fact, people might say that Tom King wasn't a Wally West fan. I think he was a huge Wally West fan because he did something interesting with the character after other people screwed him up. So...
Well, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, and that's a complaint a lot of people throw at Tom King is when he writes a book is that they're like he obviously doesn't know the characters. Where I think that he knows the characters more than the fans do. He knows deeper things about characters. He doesn't know surface level. So it's like when Rian Johnson wrote did The Last Jedi. He knew more about Star Wars than a lot of Star Wars fans, and it pissed them off. But it's things that people don't think about, and it is that because this did come on the tails of one of the reboots. Was it?
This is Rebirth, post New 52.
Yeah, I will admit to you, and you guys, I pay very little attention to when things are rebooted and when they're not. Like I don't pay that much attention to continuity. I don't get bogged down by it. Nothing is precious to me. If it's one creative team and they end their story, in my mind, you could theoretically just start all fresh with a new creative team. Like it just doesn't matter to me. But this is an interesting way of addressing, like you said, repercussions of these constant reboots and what happens when people come back and everything is different and they realize it. It's something that they sort of addressed a little bit in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the Blink, and they kind of touch on it a little bit. Like, what happens when you're gone for 5 years and you come back and somebody else is living in your apartment? People thought you were dead. People moved on with their lives. So poor Wally's in the middle of this thing. The initial thing that the people online talk about how Wally West isn't a murderer, why did they do that? You're right. Wally West isn't a murderer in this story either. Wally West is someone with immense power that goes through a psychological trauma. And that's something that King touches on a lot because he himself has been through psychological trauma. And people bitch about that and think that he adds it into his stories. And I don't know if I follow that. I think write what you know and add to it.
To piggyback off of that, as a writer, I'm a huge Tom King fan. I think he's someone that takes big swings, and when they work, man, do they work. And when they don't work, I can be like, yeah, all right, it wasn't for me, but I can see what he was doing there. I think this book, it's a big swing by Tom, but what I worry about, by making this an in-continuity DC crossover story, he ends up highlighting everything wrong about DC, right? It's the stuff that doesn't get you, Mikey. It's that you're not a continuity wonk. You're happy to start every story over again. And when Tom King tells stories out of continuity, it's great. Mr. Miracle is great. That could happen in continuity or could not happen in continuity. But here, you get Sanctuary, which to me, having read DC books for a long time, never heard of it. I even read his Batman run where I guess Sanctuary was prevalent. It never made a mark on me. The fact there's this hero crisis center that just sort of appears in the story, it seems kind of cheap. And then as soon as it appears, it's the death of all these different characters. And then it's highlighter on the fact that, okay, DC doesn't care for its legacy characters. DC doesn't know what to do with its legacy characters once they've run their course, and they decide to bring Barry Allen back. It also highlights, at least for me, I came about as a reader in the Wally West era. I had those Mark Waid Flash stories, so Wally West is my Flash. Barry Allen's never done anything for me. I didn't have the Darwin Cook for Hal Jordan, New Frontier for Barry. I've never had that story that's made me care a lick about Barry. And this story shows you, like, yeah, Barry is just crap. And then the worst part is you made us read The Price, which is Barry and Batman working together as a detective story. It totally doesn't work for me because Batman and Flash don't belong in the same room. Like, I can almost respect the Batman-Superman team up because Superman is so good and so powerful at what he does. He's being gracious and generous by letting Batman play along. But this one, like, watching Batman and the Flash in a story together, I'm like, no, there's no reason Bruce should be here. Flash should be able to do everything. before Batman takes his next breath. And it's just broken to me. And everything in this story is broken. This is the same thing as when Tom King was doing Batman, and it wasn't working for a lot of fans. His skill set does not shine in an in-continuity experience. His skill set is let him tell a story, let him take fire and ice and turn them into dames in a crime noir story. Let him take Mr. Miracle and do what he's doing with Mr. Miracle and shut up, Light Ray. But give him something in continuity, and he's going to step on a lot of toes. He's going to make some missteps. And at the end of the day, the end product isn't going to have the weight because it's not allowed to have that weight.
Yeah,
everything has to have that illusion of change.
And that's what I was going to get to. I think, when you write something like this, he probably got a set of marching orders, like this needs to be included or that. It felt to me a bit sometimes like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman were there, but then he pushed them to the side because he didn't want to write about them. He wanted to write the Booster Gold and the Harley Quinn stuff, and even Batgirl. I mean, Batman sidelined while Batgirl figures the whole mystery out before Batman does, because Batman is just sitting in his cave sending emails while the Flash is running across the world proving that he's faster than an email or something. It felt like there was things that he had to include, the editors made him include, and so he tried to write them in, and I don't think it always worked so well. But when he was telling his main story and sort of that Booster Gold, Harley Quinn, Rashomon type whodunit, I thought that was quite interesting. I did feel that the end was a cop-out. It's just the sort of going into the future and getting the clone and to replace the thing so that he closes off the time loop, and I'm still confused by that. I'm confused by this whole the Speed Force thing. Do people just live inside the Speed Force? What is it, like a alternate reality that where time doesn't work?
They keep water bottles and energy bars there.
I don't know. Is it like the clubhouse for fast people? Can Superman go into the Speed Force?
I don't know that he does he? He doesn't know that math. It's an equation.
No. Yeah.
Well, then if it's an equation, can Darkseid go into the Speed Force? It's all about the equations.
He has different equations. I will say before we jump off of this, if you are going to do the super saccharine cop-out ending, Booster and Beetle doing bros before hoes, that's the way to do it. I did appreciate that. That was in character.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I will say that, I think that's why, of all the books so far I've read of Tom King, I wasn't exactly sure whether I liked this particular book. But it's not because of the reasons other people didn't like it, right? It didn't bother me what he did with Wally West. What it bothered me was, I didn't think it was a very interesting whodunit. Maybe it was because I already knew what happened because several years later, and gosh knows the internet blew up about it. But still, I just, for example, they kill a bunch of jabronis that nobody cares about. And you're just like, all right, well, why should I care about that? To Chad's point, they introduced this sanctuary place, which it's a neat idea, but why should we care?
Nobody heard of it because it was a secret.
I get that.
Nobody was supposed to hear about it.
And then the Wally reveal was kind of neat. And I do like some of the interplay between Booster Gold and Blue Beetle and the Batgirl team up. There was some good writing there. But again, there's that scene where Tempest is getting drunk for no good reason. He's just the story with Green Arrow going to the funeral of Arsenal.
Yeah.
It seemed forced. It seemed forced. I didn't care about these kids. I don't care about Green Arrow or Arsenal. Speedy. So why would I care that he's beat up about this?
I think I'm interested in things about these books that you guys aren't. For me, the Batman Flash 2-parter thing, it's not really so much about how they solve the little adventure that they're on, but how Batman helps him deal with his trauma throughout the course of it. That's the important thread. And the important thread for me was seeing how these characters that are so often portrayed as being gods in spandex, how they actually, the idea of there being a place for them, and it's not just heroes, it's heroes and villains can go there. It's a neutral spot. the idea that there is this place that was set up because somebody recognizes what these people must go through on a daily basis is just intriguing to me, and seeing like what's really important, and those are the elements that are important to me, and as far as like how it continues on through continuity, for me it ends at the end of that book. It's like watching a movie. It's like, okay, that's done, and if it carries over, like there is a 6-issue Wally West Fixes Things miniseries called Flash Forward, which isn't bad at all. Like it's fine, but it is a means for them to sort of fixing. But it's also cool because it allows Wally to have that healing element of things that you don't. So often things happen to these characters and then it's just gone. Like there's no.
Well, I think that's really the elephant in the room for me. When I said, like, I had a hard time caring about all these people dying in Sanctuary, even heroes going through trauma, I get it. Like, Tom King was talking about, how folks in the real world have to deal with trauma, and that's an interesting thing to bring up with superheroes. But, like, the elephant in the room is death is meaningless in comic books. Death is meaningless nowadays in comic books. It doesn't matter. All these characters are going to come back eventually. So why should we care that Speedy died? Speedy will be brought back like 2 years from now, and there will be a new Speedy series. And like, why? Like,
and it doesn't even matter in the Heroes in Crisis book. They never mention it.
Yeah, but this is a story that attempts to make death matter. Like it makes the attempt. It may not matter in the long term because, with Spider-Man, Uncle Ben's death matters. He still yammers on about it every other issue, doesn't he?
That's because he's still dead. That's because
he's still dead. Did they keep him dead? Did he ever come back? Never.
They didn't bring him back.
He's the only one.
He's the only one that they never brought back. That's cool.
But no, Mike, I understand, and I think Andy's in the same ballpark with me. The swing of, hey, heroes need a place to go. I think that's great. Heroes need a place to work it out. The 9-panel grids of the heroes, doing their confessionals, those were wonderful. And people were complaining some of those are out of character. Like, that was fun. That was entertaining. That was good storytelling. The problem is it could be its own book, The Sanctuary. Yeah. Like, the fact that it shows up and it disappears in the space of this 9-issue miniseries. And the fact that it's about people going through like very real things and feelings and emotions, that stuff is important. This book should be important, but what this book is cheap. And I'm not even talking about how cheaply it was put together, where they didn't list the authors and issue numbers. Whoever's in charge of their trade collection format, I want to sit you down and have a stern talking to. But it was cheap because they take stuff that should be important. And Tom King tries to treat it with respect, but at the same time, like...
And also, I mean, me as a I don't read a lot of DC books, and I hardly read any Flash books. I didn't have any idea about this initial trauma, this loss of Wally West's wife and kids. That I was like, when did that happen? Is that a thing? I think there's some knowledge that you need to know before you start reading this book. Or I had a real trouble connecting with Wally West and the pain that he was going through because I didn't know what had caused it. Like, how long has he been back? Why did he come back and not? And it goes to Andrew's point. It said it was all Barry's fault, but I didn't know how it was Barry's fault, other than he came back and everyone was happy that he came back, but he wasn't the happy-go-lucky person that everyone thought he should be because he didn't come back with his wife and kids. That's pretty understandable, but I needed a little bit more background on that, I think. Yeah. I didn't have enough context.
You needed one of those Jonathan Hickman charts.
Yes.
Circles.
I did.
Is that editorial, though? Does the editorial decisions to retcon things so quickly cheapen something?
That's the problem with DC. Why this book is DC problem highlighter is because they're saying, hey, we realized that Wally West was bad once Mark Waid gave him a family, so we wanted to get rid of that family. So we took Wally West out of the New 52, but then Wally West showed up in a Flash show, so during Rebirth we brought in a new Wallace West, but then people wanted Wally West back and they were clamoring for that, so we gave him that too, but we didn't bring the family in, so now that was really screwed up, and Tom King's here to say that that's screwed up, but the fact is all he's doing is highlighting all the things that are screwed up about all these different reboots.
That is true. That is true. Well, one thing we're not going to reboot is our rating section. It's perfectly fine where it exists at the end of our show, and it's coming up right after these commercial breaks. Stay tuned for more Last Comic Shop right after this.
Sasquatch, the Loch Ness Monster, Mothman, the Jersey Devil, Chupacabra. For millennia, these creatures have perplexed the human race. But what if they are forces of good? What if they have been sent here by a federation of more advanced alien species to help and defend the human race? That's the premise of League of Cryptids, a new comic book by Grant Lankard, creator of the smash hits Beowulf and Memoirs of the Morbid. His new comic, League of Cryptids, is a 4-part story involving these 5 creatures banding together to defend Earth from an invading alien race, just as one of their members is losing faith in the human race and questioning their mission. The epic tale begins in League of Cryptids 1.
Check out our Kickstarter page for more information.
My name is Teresa Barber. I was in the United States Navy and I served overseas in the Middle East and Africa. Early on in my career, I had a commander that taught our suicide prevention training, and the very next day he took his own life. 90% of suicide attempts involving a gun are fatal. My way of continuing my service is to help protect my community by being a responsible gun owner and by storing firearms safely. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
All right, we're back with more of the Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for ratings, where we hope it wasn't a crisis to wait this long to get to this part of the show. I mean, it could have been. Do you need to talk about your trauma? How we made you wait till the end of the show to get to this point? But we'll make it up to you. We'll reward you with 1 out of 4 scale coming from J.A. Scott. So J.A., what do we got this week?
1 out of 4 confessionals.
Other than the 2 parade spreads, those were my favorite part of this book. Anytime you get Tom King on a 9-panel grid, it's good. I think he's the king of the 9-panel grid.
Yeah.
Whether it's, all
the
these
Tom
ones,
King.
The Tom King, that's what you call it.
Yeah.
Whether it's this, whether it's Darkseid eating a veggie platter, it just works. It works in spades. In any case, we'll go ahead and start off with Chad, because I thought, honestly, he was going to probably be the most critical of this particular book, given past conversations we had about this. So, Chad, what do you give it?
There were parts of this that I did really enjoy. I enjoyed some of the interactions between Booster and Blue Beetle, between Booster and Harley Quinn. I did not enjoy the price, which if we're including that in the rating, like I said, there's something about the Batman Flash dynamic where, I don't care about Barry Allen enough for him to be in the same room as Batman while he has all these crazy, super awesome powers, and, Batman's dressed like a bat. It just doesn't work in my head. Also, I think they highlighted things from Tom King's Batman run with Gotham Girl, stuff that didn't work for me. There's stuff that works, there's stuff that doesn't. And then at the end of the day, I do feel like we're cracking jokes about trauma, and I can see people out there that are going through genuine trauma, and these are the people they look up to, or these are the people they go to, the stories they go to for escapism, and then seeing this and then be like, oh wait, Booster Gold's not going to come back from the future with a clone to fix my problems. It's just insulting. I don't know the intention. I would be shocked if that was the intention, because Tom King's history, what he's dealt with, and
it doesn't fix Wally's problems either. It fixed the initial time loop instance, but he's still left with what happened, and he still has to deal with it.
So they never go back and just find his wife and kids and be like, oh, sorry, my bad.
That's next reboot, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the next. Yeah.
So the Heroes in Crisis itself, I would go higher, but as a whole, when we're including the price and those other things, I'm going to give it a 2.25. Once again, a big swing, but I just don't think this one landed the way it was supposed to.
All right. J.A., how many confessionals you giving it?
Yeah, I mean, I really struggled with the ending of this book. I did like the whodunit, though, again, I felt that either Tom King didn't want to use them that much, with the exception of that incredible speech that Superman gives after Lois Lane has announced to the world what Sanctuary is, and Superman comes out and owns it and says this is why it's needed, and this is why, we need to talk about trauma, and you shouldn't be scared that we're doing this. That was an incredible speech. You don't see a lot of them. Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, they're sort of shunted to the side for much more interesting characters, I'll be honest. Harley Quinn and Booster Gold, much more interesting to write for, I would imagine, than the big three. But what we didn't really talk about is how beautiful the Clay Mann art is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. I mean, from the 9-panel grids to the 3-panel pages to the huge double-page spreads, some incredible, really incredible art. And I would say that you should get this book for the subject matter, but for the art as much. I mean, oftentimes we tend to, especially when it's a Tom King book, focus a lot on the story and the writing. But comics are a visual medium for a reason, and I think that this book deserves to be read just on the art alone. I'm not going to go into the Todd McFarlane, if Shakespeare was drawn by my grandmother, no one would read it. So I'm paraphrasing, I think, McFarlane. But I think, certain books swing maybe more towards the art, certain books swing more towards the writing. I think this is a book that, even though it's a Tom King book, I would get it for the art alone. It's that good. With all that said, I think it's a 3, because I think writing-wise it's about a 2.5, but the art elevates it. The art is way above average. The art is almost a 4. It's so beautiful. But the story itself is, I really did not like the cop-out at the end. I just felt like it cheapened the 8 issues that I had just invested in the story.
Well, I'll go next, and I'm going to, double down on the art. Again, Clay Mann is just absolutely fantastic. I started the show by saying, that Donna Troy picture, oh my God. If I could have that as my wallpaper, that's great. Got another scene where it shows why, even though Superman's around Wonder Woman all the time, while he still comes back to Lois. I mean, come on. When she's wearing that Superman t-shirt, oh, Lordy Hannah. What I'm just saying is Clay Mann draws a really great comic book, and I was really all about that. But I wasn't as thrilled with the writing in this. I wasn't as thrilled with the story with this, and it had absolutely nothing to do with making Wally West the killer. Again, to my point previously, this is Tom King coming out and saying, you have inflicted sins upon certain characters, and now it's time to pay the piper, folks. In fact, I had some PTSD about what they did with Spider-Man if they ever addressed how they broke up Peter Parker and Mary Jane's marriage to begin with, and the psychological trauma that would come along with the actual what happened originally, right, with Mephisto and everything. That would be crazy to me if they ever really addressed that. That's some psychological trauma. But Sanctuary comes out of nowhere. I agree with Chad. If it had been its own thing, and we just got an opportunity to just, even if it hadn't even been 9 issues, maybe if it hadn't even been a whodunit, maybe if it was just 3 or 4 issues where you just saw superheroes going through trauma and their time in Sanctuary, I think that would have been a better story. Maybe there wouldn't have been so much action. Maybe there wouldn't have been so much, punching and kicking or whatever, but maybe you wouldn't have needed that. Maybe you could have just told the story about how superheroes deal with trauma and those 9-page spreads about how they talk about it. I think that would have been fascinating. But then you throw in the whodunit and murders that they're going to bring all these people back. So why does it matter? So I'm going to give this a 2.5. It's a little bit better than average, but I don't think it's because of Wally being the bad guy. And he wasn't even the bad guy. I don't even know how people could say he was the bad guy. He lost control of his powers in a moment of weakness. Superman could do it. Anybody could do it. Whatever. 2.5. Mikey, finish us off.
I do say those pages of A, B, and C-lister characters kind of talking about who they are and what they go through were the most interesting element of things. And I remember people saying that a lot of them are out of character, but I never see it as out of character. I see it as the character sort of being able to let down this facade that they have on all the time. So out of character is kind of interesting because maybe in character is just some bullshit that they put on when they put their mask on. You know what I mean? It's hard to say what's in character except for actual real people, because people have bad days where they're not themselves for some reason. You know, actual human beings go through fluctuations, and hopefully you're not the same person now that you were when you were 17 years old or when you were 25 years old, or when people grow and evolve and things. But yeah, that was a good element of it, and Clay Mann's artwork is really interesting, and I personally love the addendum stuff, seeing these characters go through something major that has happened in their lives and how it impacts people outside of the main story directly. And that story of the Price is really sort of about Barry dealing with the Wally issue, as well as Batman having to come to terms with the Gotham Girl issue and things like that. Like, they both have to, like, what they do has consequences and impacts things. And I find that to be really, really more interesting than just your regular sort of like Dukaroo comic book. So I mean, it's not my favorite Tom King thing that I've read. I like a lot of it more. That team, he and Clay Mann, can do no wrong. Like, none. That Batman Catwoman run that they did is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. If you ever want to see how someone can translate a script to a page, that's a book to like. His nuances and characters that when he draws them is amazing. So yeah, I mean, I would give it like a 3, like a nice strong 3. Like, it's not my favorite thing that I've read from Tom King. That's probably Mr. Miracle. It's probably still Mr. Miracle. But yeah, this one, it just hit me. The story hit me, and maybe it's because I have dealt with that kind of stuff before in my life. Maybe I identify with it a little bit because I've never used the Speed Force accidentally and killed a bunch of people, but I've been through traumatic things, and I've been through therapy. I'm in therapy, and I see what that's like. But I would read a book that all it was every month was something like, actually, there is a book. It's more comedic. It's called Superhero Shrink. What is it, Doctor? I can't remember, but it's available in trade paperback somewhere, and it's really funny. But yeah, I would read a book that was nothing but those 9-page spreads of heroes talking about what they deal with all the time. So,
all right.
Yeah.
It's now time for recommendations. This is the time of every single week where we like to give you other books in addition to Heroes in Crisis, which you can pick up at your local comic book shop in trade. Maybe you can still find it in issues, Shrugs. But yeah, these are other things. We're going to go ahead and start off with Chad. Chad, what do you got for us this week?
Okay, so initially I was going to recommend Marvel's Ultraman books just because they're candy. And that was, something as a palate cleanser. But the more we talked about this, the more we talked about heroes, going through stuff and dealing with stuff, it reminded me of one of my favorite comic books of all time. And it may or may not have been a recommendation on the show before, but it is X Factor 87. They just come out of Executioner Song, and the premise is, because it was a traumatic event, they all had to sit down with Leonard Sampson, the psychologist, and have conversations. And this was written by Peter David, with art by Joe Quesada, and they take each character one at a time, break them down into their motivations, break them down into why they are the way they are. They talk about how Strong Guy, his powers, the way that they work, like he absorbs energy from impact, but like he's in a state of constant agony. And the reason why he makes those jokes is because if his friends knew that he was hurting all the time, like that would be the thing that kills him. Like he wouldn't be able to put up with their pity. It gives you some pathos to Strong Guy. It talks about Rain and all the different things she's going through, her father issues and all kinds of other stuff. Polaris, she's having image issues and, body image and all this other stuff. But the big one was Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver. They talk about what life would be like for someone who has superpowers. And he talks about PMS, aka Pietro Maximoff syndrome, where like everyone else in your life is moving at a snail's pace. Like, of course you'd be angry and frustrated all the time. But like they go through Havoc, they go through Multiple Man. Multiple Man does a thing with a Ren and Stimpy shirt that kind of confused me at the time. It's a great issue. It's a great single issue that gets you into each of these characters. And from that day forward, I was a Madrox fan. I was a Strong Guy fan. I was a Havoc fan. Like, it really gets down to the essence of these characters and makes you care. So it is X Factor 87. You can find it in Buck Bins. You can find it in the back issues. They're all worth picking up and reading.
That is great, X Factor, even if they have like Havoc's worst costume ever.
The worst!
The leather, that's leather jacket Havoc?
Yes, and head sock.
I actually know that there's actually a sequel to that episode called Re-Examinations, which was X Factor 13 from the 2005 X Factor series.
The Peter David, when he picks it up.
But anyway.
Chad and I are on the same wavelength because I am also recommending an X Factor book, and that is X Factor Volume 1, number 24. And that is the birth, if you will, of Archangel under the tutelage of Apocalypse. This takes place during Fall of Mutants. This is right after Mutant Massacre, so Angel has lost his wings, and Apocalypse returns them to him and makes him blue, but not his eyebrows. So he's blue-faced, but yellow eyebrows. I always love that touch. This is, Walt Simonson, Louise Simonson at their height of their powers. It's just a great story. It sets up basically most of Fall of Mutants in this. And talking about a heel turn, if you will, or a major character revision, as I mentioned at the start of the show, Angel was very white bread. He got some anger issues now, and wings that maybe are controlling him or he's controlling them, and Apocalypse gets to play around and say, actually, no, I was never controlling you. You were always controlling it the whole time. You're just messed up, son. You're one messed up individual. Don't blame me.
Yikes.
Well, I'm going to go next, and I'm going to actually switch it back to DC, given that we were reading some DC this week. I went on the bookshelf, and I was looking for books I hadn't read in a really long time. And so I decided to revisit a 2-issue run that came out in 1992. It was released for the 50th anniversary of my favorite Batman Rogues Gallery member, and that's Two-Face. It's called Two-Face Strikes Twice. It was written by Mike W. Barr, and it actually has 2 different artists because it's kind of cool. Like, it has one issue, and then if you flip it over, it has a different issue. So the Golden Age story with like the kind of Golden Age art was done by Joe Staton with a Dick Sprang cover, which is awesome. And then there's more of a modern take with Derek Gross on art. Although the Derek Gross story is kind of neat, you read it, but you really pick this up for the Golden Age story, right? It's awesome how Mike W. Barr just goes back and he starts pulling out all these little Easter eggs and things that Bill Finger used to do in the Golden Age comics, like the fact that if Two-Face, if he stole during the daylight, he would give whatever he stole to charity. Like, I thought that was kind of a neat little nod to back when Two-Face used to do these kind of things. And he, tries to run over Batman and Robin with a giant quarter. And, it's just a lot of fun. And the fact that you get the Dick Sprang cover, the fact that Joe Staton really does capture that Golden Age, wonderful nostalgia. They even go to an anti-crime convention at the beginning of the book with Commissioner Gordon, and they're walking around. It's fun. I've seen this, I believe it or not, in Buck Bins. Even though, the covers are a little more like you would get with a trade paperback, I just find them in Buck Bins. And so pick it up when you can find it. That's Batman Two-Face Strikes Twice.
Cool. Well, I don't know if this is sort of a cop-out because it's kind of a currently going thing, but I cannot recommend enough the DC Absolute books. These are reboots in the true sense of the word. It's basically sort of DC's, I guess, Ultimate kind of thing, like when they did Ultimate Marvel a while back. But it's better. They take bigger swings. Talk about swings. My favorite one so far, that I think the best one is Wonder Woman by Kelly Thompson, and with art by Hayden Sherman. And Jordi Belair. I mean, they're all fresh takes, but the Wonder Woman book is really, really cool. Lots of mythology going on. Kaiju, in the first issue, she's fighting giant monsters with giant anime swords, and she's a princess of hell and things like that. It's super, but she's still Diana of the Amazons, and Steve Trevor is still there, and Etta Candy's still there, and things like that. But that's so far that's my favorite one. And I do see that they did solicit a few new ones, Flash and Martian Manhunter, and another one, Green Lantern. They're due to come out. So yeah, but yeah, I can't recommend them, and I'll try not to recommend them the next time I'm on there. But I might. Yeah.
I love the fact in Meatball Batman's book, his rogues gallery are his childhood pals.
Yeah.
Like, how cool is that?
Like Facebook gone bad.
Yeah.
Well, here at the Last Comic Shop, we hope that we never go bad because we're always fresh. We're always fresh with a brand new episode every single Tuesday. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe over at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. Even if you want to, we don't have an expiration date on our past episodes. They are evergreen, folks. You can go into our archives. You can listen to any of our past, almost 225 episodes that we have available.
I was to say, about half of them are Tom King books.
Yeah. About half of them are Tom King books. Even had like a Tom King tournament last Christmas. We might have to pull that out again, just simply because, man, he does write a lot of stuff that we like. So if you're interested in Tom King, if you're interested in Batman, if you're interested in The Flash, if you're interested in Spider-Man or Silver Surfer or a Dan Slott book, you can look in our archives, find those episodes, and make sure that you're subscribing so you don't miss what we've got coming up next.
Have you read a Dan Slott book?
Ooh, I know I've recommended one. I really liked his Iron Man run. I don't care a lick about Iron Man. I think that's why.
Is Slott the guy that did the whole thing with Otto Octavius and
the Superior Spider-Man? Yeah.
Oh, is that what they hated him for? Didn't they? They really hated him.
Well,
for
no,
something.
that was real good.
His characterization of Otto Octavius and bad guy Spider-Man, that was awesome. But it's because I didn't care about bad guy Spider-Man up until that point. So it was like, this is neat. I like it.
Yeah.
But then he came back to Peter Parker, and I'm like, this isn't Peter Parker. What the hell is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that we have covered a Dan Slott book, have we? We've talked a lot of smack on Dan Slott. Never given him his due. And you can find us every week on the socials and on our website. Both times you want to look for lastcomicshoppodcast.com. That's right. You can find us on Blue Sky. You can find all sorts of comic conversation and Golden Age covers to put you in bed at night, things from the buck bins, all sorts of fun. And then on our website, that connects you to those past episodes. That connects you to the merch store. And J.A., what can folks find at our merch store this week?
This week we've got white robes and metal masks. We didn't mention that, but
no.
if you were at Sanctuary and you didn't want other people to notice who you were, you could walk around in a white robe and wear this metal mask.
Yeah.
But no, they never took off their shoes or their gloves, so it's like, oh, that guy's got yellow shoes and red gloves.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. I wish we would have got to see more of that. It would kind of been like Logan's Run. And then I kept on thinking everybody was taken over by Psycho Pirate. Didn't Psycho Pirate have like a mask thing going on?
Yeah, I definitely got Psycho Pirate.
Here? I would have liked to have seen like the cult-esque stuff.
It was very culty, that one. But,
what was the Tom Cruise movie? The
Eyes Wide Shut.
There you go.
Originally titled but they're not allowed to call it that.
Anyways, if you want coffee mugs, tote bags, hats, or T-shirts, sweatshirts, and other paraphernalia to support the podcast, check it out at our merch store.
And while we might be the Last Comic Shop podcast, we don't want to be the last comic shop, so we encourage everybody to get out there and support your shops. Do that by buying things that we talked about this week, including but not limited to Heroes in Crisis, issues 1 through 9, or Heroes in Crisis of the Price and Other Stories, which is collected as well. We also talked about some X Factor books, Volume 1, Issue 24, which is that great Walt Simonson Archangel origin. X Factor 87, which came along much later, but has the team sitting down for therapy. Or maybe you've had enough of X Factor and you'd like to go back and try some DC stuff. You want to go Golden Age style, you get Two-Face Strikes Twice, where you get that Golden Age story by Mike Barr or Joe Staten. Or the modern flip side story from Derek Gross. Both issues are out there. Or maybe you want to go ultra new. You want to do the big thing, the hot stuff. The absolute DC comic series, as of right now, includes Absolute Batman, Absolute Wonder Woman, and Absolute Superman. Mikey says Absolute Wonder Woman is the way to go. I can't disagree, but they're all pretty good. as Mikey had alluded to. So all that and more waits for you at your local comic shop. Check them out today.
And Mikey, if once you buy all these comic books, you're going to want to protect them. So what's the best way for folks out there to protect their comics?
You're going to want to use bags and boards from BCW Supplies. They have backing boards. They have bags that have those really cool self-sealing things, which are the best things in the world, even though I barely have any of them. They have boxes for you to put your bags and board comics in, so you can put the boxes in your garage and your wife can complain about them. They've got everything that you should need. And we've got a really, really super cool discount code that will get you a wonderful discount on your supplies. It is LCS Pod. That's LCSPOD for Last Comic Shop Podcast. So LCS Pod, put that in when you order your stuff. Get a little discount. We get a little credit for it. And we thank you.
And we definitely do thank you. And we hope that those thanks will encourage you to come back next week when we'll be talking about Deadpool Team Up. It's Chad's pick, so stick around for more Rob Liefeld action. Until then, I was the host with most, Danny Larson. I was joined by Chad Smith, Jay Scott, and the wonderful Mikey Wood. And we hope that you stay safe, stay healthy. Yeah, make sure you're taking care of your mental health. And remember, if you ever find wooden shoes in your toilet, chances are you've got yourself a clog.
That one I like.
If we're reading Rob Liefeld next week, we're definitely talking about the writing, not the art, right?
Comic Shop Podcast was a 2025 Black Angus production.